Welcome to our Quickfire Friday podcast. This is the Grow a Small Business Podcast Friday series, designed for people who need big insights in little time. In just 20 minutes each week, with no fluff, just real, proven tactics from people who know their stuff. With your hosts, Mick, AJ, and me, Rob Cameron.
Great. Well, Eddie, great to meet with you today. And as I was saying, I haven't had a lot of guests that specifically focus on pricing. And it's such an important lever of profitability and business performance in so many different ways that I feel a little bit ashamed to admit that, because we should be talking about pricing a little bit more. So again, thank you for joining us. And to kick things off, can I pass it over to you to tell us a little bit about who you are and how you describe what it is that you do?
Absolutely, Rob, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about pricing and all things related to it. So my name is Etinosa Agbonlahor. I am a behavioral economist, and I run a firm called Decision Alpha, which is a team of behavioral economists who specialize in pricing and monetization. So what that means in plain English is that we help business owners with their pricing and with the confidence to actually charge well for their products and services. And we also buckle that on with helping them to build financially healthy businesses in terms of having better acquisition and retention overall. So we deep dive into pricing, and then also with that, the business health, acquisition and retention side of things.
Awesome. Yeah, like I say, it's such an important area for any business owner. But tell me a bit about the type of clients that you tend to find yourself working with.
We work with a range of customers, everyone from lawyers to founders who are building SaaS platforms or even AI natives. I just was on a call with somebody who's building an AI platform to help VCs do better due diligence. And so we kind of work across the gamut. The only areas where we won't work in are heavily areas with heavy compliance, like sort of pharmaceuticals, for example. We wouldn't be in that space, but technically or typically we work across the gamut from small businesses who offer services through to the growth stage startups who are in more of the tech heavy space. The thing that kind of has people coming to us, or the signals that have people coming to our door, tend to be they feel frustrated with their marketing, or they're looking at their revenue and they feel like they're doing everything, but it's not quite clicking. Right. So that feeling of I've done everything I can do, I'm talking to people, I'm selling, but how come every time I look in my bank account, I feel a little bit panicky or worried, right? So that tends to be what gets people thinking, I wonder if there's something wrong with our pricing. And that will either through referrals or through them seeking us out, is kind of what brings people to us.
Yeah, great. It's interesting. So when a client engages with you, what's typically the process you take them through? And is it the same for every client, or does it depend a bit on, I guess, what their needs are, or where they're at?
Mm. We do have a pricing framework that starts with establishing what we call monetization zones, which is essentially what parts of the business can you charge for? What can you monetize? Because a lot of times, business owners, for example, if you're a lawyer, you think I do these three things and that's all I do. But your skill set might allow you to do a little bit more, might be able to intersect what customers are looking for in a different way. So we talk about let's establish what you can also actually monetize in the business. You've established your monetization zones. Then we do the actual pricing research, the quant research, the core research. We actually talk to your customers and prospects to get the pricing. Then we step into what we call the kind of narrative, the framing, the behavioral economics, to be called the psychology. We teach you how to, or we teach our clients how do you actually frame your pricing, right? In what context you put it? What do you compare it to? What do you show your customers so that they understand the value that your price is trying to translate? And then finally, we talk about testing and scaling. So we try and make sure that everyone who works with us, like you mentioned, you've done 150 episodes and maybe a couple on pricing. A lot of people have that approach to pricing where it's sort of like set it and forget it. Let's never talk about it again because it's so important and so complex. So the final step of our process, that framework I mentioned, is testing and scaling, making sure that price becomes almost like a feature. Like once a quarter, sit down, look at the value you offer, look at the new features you've shipped out if you're on the SaaS side of things, and think through, am I still pricing the right way? It doesn't mean that you're going to change your pricing every quarter, but it does mean that you're treating pricing as a feature and not just reacting to market pressure, there's inflation or whatever, which then drives a change in pricing. So that's sort of like the process that we go through uh, with our clients to kind of maybe drive it home a little bit further. Imagine you sell watches, for example. You sell watches, you're a watchmaker, you come to us and say, hey, I'm not quite sure what I should price this watch. We've come up with a new brand of watch. Let's say it's, I don't know, it's waterproof, for example. We would start by understanding what did it cost to build the watch, right? That's kind of BAU. Then we'll go into, all right, what are the different features of the watch that's valuable to people? It's waterproof. Maybe that resonates with Olympic swimmers. Maybe it's super accurate. Maybe there's somebody out there who the things that your watch offers really resonates with. That's mapping out the monetization zones. Then we take it into the research and we sit with your potential Olympic swimmers, your potential customers to understand what would you pay for a watch that is super waterproof? What would you pay for a watch that is really, really accurate? So that is us doing the pricing research, expanded instruments, and some of our own IP to look at what would you pay, what your prospective customers would pay for, and that helps us then establish what is the range of prices that we should be looking at here. And then we take that into, all right, we understand that we have a sense of what the pricing should be for this thing. How do we frame it? Should your watch be framed as a Casio or a Breitling? How do we make sure that your customers know they're in the right rooms? How do you make sure that the way you put it in front of them is going to resonate? And now you have this price, you understand how to frame it. Let's make sure that you're not stuck on the same price for the next 5 years. So that's sort of the process we walk most people through.
Yeah, fascinating. That sounds really thorough. So let's bring that to life a bit and tell me a bit about a case study or an example of how you implement this and what it was able to achieve for the client.
Mm. So in the early days of Decision Alpha, we had an ed tech startup come to us, and the conversation they had, or the problem they had, was they had been marketing B2B, so really selling their product directly into schools and charter schools, educational programs. And now they had created a version of the product that would resonate. They wanted to sell directly to consumers, so B2C. And because we're so used to selling into the B2B space, they had no idea what to do with the B2C space. They had a sense of, we think we could charge this much, but we're not quite sure what we're doing when it comes to price. And because they weren't sure what to do with their pricing, they didn't necessarily want to do all of the pricing research upfront. They just wanted to look at how do we even frame this to a regular customer? How do we make sure the way we frame our pricing is going to resonate before we even talk about what exactly to charge? So we took their current pricing, we took their pricing page, and we ran it through. We have what we call a behavioral pricing scorecard. And it basically looks at your pricing from the perspective of, are you framing it right? Are you putting the right kind of anchors around it? What are you comparing to? Is the language easy to understand? What are the tiers that you're packaging it with? With them, for example, they had the standard kind of monthly subscription. And we pushed back on that and said, this is a low price product. In behavioral economics, we talk about the concept of the pain of paying, which is every time you swipe your card, every time you spend money, there's a little bit of a pain that's attached to that. We don't
Can
necessarily
you say
feel
that phrase again? Sorry, I couldn't quite hear it. It was
the pain of paying.
pain of paying. Yeah, okay.
Yep. So every time you
Yes,
spend money, it hurts a tiny bit.
I'm familiar with that feeling. Yeah.
Right. Now, if you're on a monthly subscription, what most people are banking on is that inertia. You're going to forget eventually because nobody really checks the bank statement. But for people who do check their bank statements, who are thinking every time they see your edtech platform come up, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, I am paying $5 for this product. I am paying $12 for this product. It reminds them of consistently, there's a little bit of pain every time they pay for your product each month, but it's low priced enough that you could charge an annual subscription. The pain occurs once a year and you keep it moving, right? So we're able to challenge on why you default into a monthly subscription when this is low enough that you could charge in a different way, still make the same amount of revenue and reduce the risk of churn from your customers.
So switching from monthly to annual billing, but still on a subscription model.
Still on a subscription model, still on that every year, because it was low enough that they didn't need to be putting that pain in front of customers consistent. It just made sense for them. It doesn't make sense for everybody. This is why you do right? But with them, it just made more sense. So them switching to that model, them reducing how technical the language was on their pricing page, them thinking through, all right, before they only had two tiers. And we said, you can introduce a third tier. What you want to do is because most people, when they're not quite sure what to do, they're going to go for the middle option. Also, there's ways how you can structure the other options in front of them that help them kind of understand the value that you're trying to drive, right? You get more of this with this package, but it's way more expensive. You get less of this from this package. It's a little bit cheaper. Maybe you should go for the middle option, right? So we're able to help them restructure that page. And that middle option was their preferred tier. 90% of the people who chose to work with them moving forward after they accepted our changes and implemented them chose their preferred tier. And that was from us just changing the narrative around the pricing, changing the way the pricing was put in front of customers, not changing the pricing itself. So that really is the power of bringing psychology and bringing behavioral economics into the pricing side of things. It's not just what should you charge, it's how do you charge for it, right? It's the Breitling versus a Casio.
So would you say there are common problems that you come across in the clients that you work with? And when I say problems, I guess it's more, are there common barriers that are holding them back from charging what they should or in the most optimal way?
Yes, and it's really interesting because I see this from people who are new business owners, people who are doing millions in, annual recurring revenue. Lack of confidence. Lack of confidence shows up in pricing. I'm sure if there was a way to map this, there's probably a linear relationship between how confident the founder and CEO is and the extent to which they're undercharging or putting muddled pricing in front of their customers. So that often is a barrier that we have to kind of talk through with our founders, with our clients, and kind of walk through, because everyone is scared of, if I raise my prices, will all my customers leave, right? If I raise my prices, am I going to be insulting my legacy clients who were there with me before my business was really developed, before my product was the real thing, right? When we
Yeah.
talk to them, there's ways to do that. You should honor your legacy clients, absolutely, but there's ways to think through how do we start to not necessarily always raise prices, but start to revisit them in a way that's going to help you build a business that's sustainable from the financial side of things. Because it does no credit to your business, to your customers, if you run out of business or if you run out of money. So we often have to actually have that conversation about lack of confidence first, regardless of if they're a super high flaunting lawyer or they're a founder who started up 2 years ago. Always goes back to confidence.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Want specific advice to help you get your business through its #1 growth challenge? Book a free 20-minute growth chat with me, Troy, the founder of Grow a Small Business. I'll recommend some resources which will help you grow your business with ease so you can live the lifestyle you've signed up for. Go to growasmallbusiness.com and click on Growth Chat.
I remember hearing a statement once, which was something like 90% of your pricing problems are between your ears, in that they're more to do with the way that you're thinking as opposed to the way your clients are perceiving it. So I would totally agree that confidence is a big factor. Do you often come across clients where you advise them they're overcharging?
A lot of times when somebody is overcharging, the market tells them.
Yeah.
People just don't buy what people just don't buy what they're offering.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when people are overcharging, we haven't run into that quite yet. Oftentimes the issue is people are undercharging, and that's what we're trying to help them rectify. With overcharging, I feel like that's one of the rare areas where actual pure economics kind of helps take care of it. But I've never had an issue where somebody came to me and was worried about not making sales because we're overcharging. That's interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, yeah. And look, I was fascinated. I mean, certainly most of the clients that we work with, it's a question of getting their prices up as opposed to getting them down. But yeah, I was just curious whether that was something you came across. But I think you're quite right. I think if you're overcharging, the market will let you know. And I guess it's just people understanding their own minds that potentially if they drop their prices, they're not necessarily going to get a whole heap more business, but they potentially could be giving away a lot of their margin. or potentially they will get more business and just end up being busier for the same level of profitability.
Exactly. And also attracting clients that maybe they don't want to, right? Clients who might need more TLC and more, higher touch than clients who are at a different level financially. So sometimes dropping prices is not the answer. There's other ways to think through how do we incentivize and how do we drive customer loyalty, or how do we improve customer retention overall, right? I do think like there's a relationship between pricing and retention that people don't often kind of talk to, but there's ways to use your pricing to continue to. It's kind of what we talked about with having legacy businesses or legacy customers, using your pricing to help drive and encourage retention among those customers, because it's often more efficient to keep the customers you have and have them increase their spend with you than it is to go out and spend money to try and acquire new customers constantly.
Yeah, great point. So in terms of clients that you work with, I mean, is there a minimum viable revenue or profit that makes it worthwhile engaging with a business like yours?
We always say once you've achieved product market fit, and I know that's a techie term, it's not really a small business term, but when you've gotten to the stage where you know that what you have to offer to the market resonates, people have bought from you, they are buying from you, you have consistent revenue, it's just not enough. Just makes you feel like you're working too hard, but the amount you get to keep at the end of the day, that's when it makes sense. Some people will say they kind of start the 300K and above level, but we're kind of open to, we try and frame it more in terms of if you buy cheap product market fit, if you have consistent customers, but your revenues or your markets you feel like there's a problem, then that's when you come to us.
Brilliant. So if you had one piece of advice from this conversation to share with the small business owners who are listening, what might that be?
Go review your pricing.
Yeah, okay.
Review your pricing. We do have a free behavioral pricing playbook. They can take that, download that, and flip through that, and kind of help them think through their pricing. If you're looking for more standard small business advice, what I've learned coming into this space has been having a routine is very important. Having a plan for the week, consistent. Every week I do this. Mondays I do this. Tuesdays I do this. And then every month I do this, and every quarter I do this. Can be very helpful because a lot of the small business life has a lot of those like gray areas where you're kind of in the suck, right? You haven't yet seen outcomes from all the work you've put in, but it doesn't mean that the work wasn't useful or wasn't driving progress. It's just a gray area between what you did and the results of what you did. And being in that gray area can drive a lot of like what you said before, everything that goes on within your mind. You're not quite sure, what should I do? Should I go here? Should I go there? Having a routine helps you just kind of get through all of those great moments of gray areas. It helps you get through the suck and stick with it long enough to see the outcomes.
Yeah, great point. Great point. So if people are interested in what we've been talking about today and would like to find out a bit more about you, where's the best place to get some more information?
Absolutely. They can go to our website, is decisionalpha.co. And that playbook I mentioned, it's free. They can download that at playbook.decisionalpha.co.
Brilliant. Well, we'll certainly send a few people that way. Well, Eddie, thank you so much for your time. That was a really useful discussion. Like I said, I'd like to have more discussions on pricing. So perhaps we can get you back again sometime and explore some of these concepts in a bit more detail. That's great.
I would love that, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you.
We'd greatly appreciate you taking a couple of minutes to leave our podcast a review on iTunes. If you don't have an account, simply follow us on Spotify. You'll help other small business owners find the cast and valuable content our guests share.